Bitcoin's alive, what you gon' do? Mempool fees are high. Ordinal. Where does it stop? Nobody knows. It's a revolution, ayy. Bitcoin is the one, no substitution, ayy. With Shizzy and Yagobi, it's Ordinal Revolution.
Welcome back to Ordinal Revolution. My name is Shizzy. On this channel, we cover the entire Bitcoin ordinal ecosystem. What is up, guys? We got another interview for you guys today. Today, we got Matt from Arch Network. Man, they're building something pretty awesome over there. They're about to go and test net. We're going to dig into exactly what Arch is and what Arch is going to be. If you guys haven't seen it on the timeline, you know, we got some communities out there fighting and stuff like that. But you got to remember, it's all love, man. It's all about the building. On our show, we want to showcase the builders, and that's what we're going to do today. We've been looking forward to this for a long time because we've been hearing about these guys working with Liquidity, and you know, our partner at Fluid was talking about these guys, and we're like, oh, we got to get them on the show. We got to learn more about them, because that's one thing about the show that's amazing for us anyway. We get to sit down, we get to get all of our questions answered, and we hope you guys have the same questions. So looking forward to this one. Let's get into it. Bring my partner here as always, Mr. Yagobi. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man?
What's up, dude? So we got Arch today. We've both been looking forward to this, right?
Yeah, we've been looking forward to talking to Arch Network since, I would say, Nashville's. Whenever we met a couple of people, I think that maybe are in their network, right? And I had some good conversations. Haven't had a ton of time to dive in, and so I'm really looking forward to speaking to Matt, the CEO from Arch today. But one thing I did notice is they got some pretty big power backers that are backing them, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, man, for sure. Let's get this started. Let's bring them up. Matt, welcome to Ordinal Revolution, my friend.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Well.
Good. That intro beat was pretty good. It got me pumped. Whoever did that did well.
We actually have a community member from the Ordinals, or Bitcoin community, Sam Sage, that created that and our other live stream intro. So we always like to give back to the community. So we hooked up with him and stuff. So it was cool.
Cool. Props
to him. Yeah. And the best part, he's like a Spanish guy. He doesn't do English music a lot, so it was really cool to see him put that together. So we're very happy with it. Shout out Sam Sage, man. But let's get this started. Obviously we can't wait to dig into Arch, but we'd like to know who we're talking to. So if you can kind of give us maybe your background as far back as possible, and kind of lead us up to your crypto journey.
Yeah, sure. So actually, one of the rare individuals that crypto journey really dates as far back as like 2012, when I was mining Bitcoin in my college dorm room. Actually, I was taking advantage of the free electricity. We were mining on laptops back then. There weren't even ASICs or any GPUs or anything like that. So fun times. I had a buddy of mine who told me, he swore that Bitcoin would be worth $100,000 one day. At the time, it was like $7. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pay attention. And I decided to just dive in and learn as much as I could. And for a while there, it got a little disinteresting. Of course, my entrepreneurial endeavors took over. It was cool mining these coins and day trading them on BitInstant for for a short period of time. But it wasn't until like 2016, 2017 with the ICO wave that's when I said, okay, now I see this new like distributed systems type of thing where you can create novel applications utilizing blockchain. So lots of ideas, that were formed during those days. Lots of capital that was being raised. Ethereum, Filecoin, Tron. There was a lot of those, new technologies that did pretty well for people who participated in those ICO days. So that was fun, and so I participated in that cycle, and then went back into my entrepreneurial career, started a few companies, and then of course the DeFi summer of 2020 and the NFT cycle kind of took on, and I was fairly early to that one as well, like participated in the Bored Ape community, and as well as some of these early DeFi protocols and farming and learning that whole ecosystem, and then of course like Ordinals of last year, that was like the next big opportunity. I'm like, okay, this is big. I saw this huge wave. People were inscribing JPEGs and audio files at that time using spreadsheets and trading them back and forth, and there were bitmaps, and it was all getting quite exciting. And that's when I decided to join the Bitcoin Startup Lab to learn even more and dive even more into the developer ecosystem. And that's where I met my co-founder, Amin, who was working on this infrastructure that is now called Arch.
Wow. So you're just like really early to everything.
I do like to pat myself on seeing like these early trends for sure. Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
like what I like to be on the cutting edge, and
Yeah.
that's what this opportunity represented. Was for the first time I was always early to crypto as a passive investor, in NFTs and tokens and so forth, but in mining. But this was the first time I could actually apply my entrepreneurial experience to something within crypto and still being early. So it was a huge moment for me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you have a knack for being around the right people too, right? So your friend early on with encouraging you to mine because he is about to be right, by the way. We're not far from $100,000 Bitcoin. But also, finding yourself into BTC Startup Lab. I think we're going to look back once we're into the next cycle, and we're going to look at all the graduates of this BTC Startup Lab and see where they are, because there's a lot of knowledgeable, wise people in there, and young and ambitious students as well. I guess you would call them. What are your thoughts on that? Is that how you see it as well?
For sure. No, I'm very grateful for that experience, and I'll give another shout out to the guys that put on this event in Atlanta called Web3 ATL. It's a nonprofit called 404 DAO. It's like the blockchain group at Georgia Tech, and this was like during the bear market, right? This was like last year. There wasn't a lot going on in fundraising and crypto in general. And there's a little bit in AI, a little bit in DePIN, but really just like not a whole lot of excitement. So I was just, I just went up there for the weekend, just randomly, just because I saw it, crypto conference in Atlanta. I live in Tampa, so it was only about an 8-hour drive. So I drove up there. There's like 4 different rooms. You have like the main stage room, and then the little bit smaller but still big room, and then there's like this tiny little room on the side that's building on Bitcoin. And I wander into that room, and I see like Dylan and Diego from Bitflow, who's speaking on this panel, Andre Serrano from Stacks, and Jacob as well from Bitcoin Frontier Fund. And I was starting to learn a little bit more about ordinals and about like the building on Bitcoin space. And it was very, very small back then. And I was like so inspired to learn more. I went up to Dylan and Diego. I said, man, let's go to lunch. I want to like pick your brain. And they suggested go apply to the Bitcoin Startup Lab. And I probably would never have heard about it if I didn't go to that conference and I didn't talk to Dylan and Diego and them encouraging me to apply. So, one thing led to another. I think Dylan and Diego will probably be like the most successful of the first cohort, right, with Bitflow and their DEX aggregator. And then Amin and I in the second cohort, successfully raising from some pretty big investors, as you mentioned, Yagobi. So I think that Bitcoin Startup Lab is a good, foundational piece to creating the necessary interest from the developer community to want to build the next blue chips on Bitcoin, which are certainly coming.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I believe it was Diego that you said Bitflow. Did you mean Satflow, or is that Bitflow something different?
No, Bitflow is a DEX that's currently on Stacks.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing like a runes DEX aggregator now. I believe they're working on a bridge to get your runes over to the Stacks ecosystem, so now they can trade in a more liquid type of environment. But they've built a DEX aggregator product, and it's a great user experience. You should go give it a try.
Yeah, I forgot that BTC Startup Lab did start in those ecosystem Stacks and just trying to really venture out and help build that up. And then Ordinals came along, and then they really kind of not pivoted, because I know they still are interested in those ecosystems, but realize that, hey, there's a big opportunity here because things are starting to move fast. So
Yep.
that's really awesome. And you're absolutely right. Each cohort, there's an all-star that's born, whether that's Liquidium, like you said, Bitflow in the early days, and you got like Bison Labs as well that are still working, I know, and then you guys, right? So what bit of advice could you give a young builder that's coming into the Bitcoin ecosystem of how to get started with like BTC Startup Lab?
Well, first you have to apply, right? Like, I think that's the very first step. I remember back when I was in that cohort, there's a huge range of experience, right? From I have absolutely no idea how to start a business, and like I need help with that. And then you have people who like me, who are a little bit more on the experience side. I've had some successful exits in my track record, and I kind of get up to speed a little faster from 0 to 1. So I would say that if you obviously there's anywhere in between on that spectrum. So anybody can technically get value out of joining an accelerator such as Bitcoin Startup Lab. All you have to do is apply to their next cohort whenever there becomes applications available, and that's the major first step. You're already like on your way. When I first joined, I had no idea what idea that I wanted to do. Like the idea that I went into the Bitcoin Startup Lab application process with was like a cross-chain lending application, and I think Albert just kind of took a bet on me as a founder, said, you'll figure it out, you'll pivot, or you'll find somebody else in the lab that, you check their boxes. And that's exactly what happened. Amin and I, we check each other's boxes really well because, he's a very technical CTO type of leader, very research and coding oriented. I'm much more operations and marketing focused and a little more experienced, where he's a little younger. So we fit, really well together as partners. And but we both really aligned on the fact that, number one, we have extreme work ethic and dedication to this one idea that layer one is where programmability should at least be innovated and expanded upon first before we start focusing on scalability. And that's ultimately what we saw when we joined the Bitcoin Startup Lab. Everyone was talking about layer twos, building a layer two, or which L2 they wanted to build their app on. Like Fonzie over at Ordinal Hive, for example, he's like, do I build it on Bison Labs? Do I build it on Merlin? Do I build it on Stacks? Everyone's trying to decide which stack or which chain they're going to build on. And we're saying like, whoa, let's not totally abandon the fact that all the liquidity is already ready to be tapped into on the layer one. And everybody already doesn't want to bridge their assets somewhere else. If they did, they probably would have already done it to Ethereum or Solana a long time ago. So that's really kind of what we started with. And we kept iterating on exactly how we wanted to bring this construct together. And once we figured out how we wanted to go about it, it was kind of just full steam ahead from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's keep going with that, because it's really interesting. Like so you guys leave the Bitcoin what's a cohort, right? You guys leave that and you guys keep going. What's the next steps in the process of getting us to Arch?
So we took a little bit of an accelerated approach. I knew that as soon as December was over and the new year had started, I wanted to just hit the ground running, establish a ton of momentum, and not really wait until demo day. Demo day is when all of the Bitcoin Startup Lab projects present to the broader investment community that are coming to see what everyone is presenting. But I knew that we had something that was quite interesting and different, and I didn't want to wait for demo day to necessarily raise funds. So I immediately started a seed round that we initially got Portal Ventures involved in, and they were, that's another tip for founders. You want to find an investor that is going to assist you in certain types of ways, like strategic ways. And early on in the process, especially when you haven't raised a ton of capital, and you know that you need a lot to really compete or build whatever products you want to build, you need more introductions to more VCs. You need to build more momentum around your round. So just like retail investors feel FOMO, VCs feel FOMO. And if they don't feel that FOMO, they're just going to dilly-dally. They don't feel urgency about participating. They're going to negotiate you down, things of that nature. But if they feel like the price is running away from them, or they're not going to get the chance, they're going to get that fear of missing out in that early stage of that venture, then everyone's going to move a little bit quicker, have a little bit more urgency. So equipping yourself with an investor who has a good network of investors and has the respect of those investors, more importantly, is very important. So we did a deal with Portal Ventures first, who had a great network of investors and has a huge amount of respect in the Bitcoin space for their insights. And they even wrote a Bitcoin Renaissance paper very early on, establishing this thesis that the building on Bitcoin space is going to be completely revived. And 6 months later, hundreds of millions of dollars are being poured in from the venture community into that space. So I think they had a lot of credibility. And through that, we got access to a lot of other investors and got able to pitch them on our approach. So Multicoin came in and really liked our differentiated approach. Jason Choi and his fund really liked our differentiated approach. And we really have a really stellar cap table of investors that have high conviction in this idea that the layer two isn't exactly how we start. It's maybe where we finish, but we need to worry about bringing programmability to Bitcoin first before scalability.
I love it.
Yeah,
Amen.
I love it too. And you're absolutely right. You guys do have a really strong investor group backing you guys. So that's really, really impressive. Could you, I guess let's get into the a little bit of the bare bones of Arch Network. You know, where did this idea come from, and what is it, first of all, right? So the audience can maybe understand in simple terms, if you can.
Yeah, so like the sole premise is that Bitcoin is not expressive. It does not possess the capabilities to do Turing-complete smart contracts. And what a Turing-complete smart contract is, in a nutshell, to break it down to its simplest form, is you have the ability to do both a state change and an asset transfer. Now, while metaprotocols and layer twos have the ability to do all these state changes, they don't have the ability to shuffle assets around in a programmatic and decentralized kind of way that is trustworthy. Right? We have these things called PSBTs, which allow you in a peer-to-peer type of way, sign one side of a transaction with certain conditions, and then only those conditions will happen if the other side signs. But we don't really have these smart contract controlled wallets or program derived addresses like we do have on Ethereum and Solana, which allow for the Turing completeness of those programmable chains. So what we have on Bitcoin, we have these multi-sigs. And ultimately, what most people are doing are they're building these layer twos that completely revolve around the idea that the state changes on that layer two within that multi-sig are going to ultimately, be governed by that chain. And then however they're going to post that data back to Bitcoin eventually, whether it's through some ZK proof or roll up or something like that, that's their plan. But that doesn't really facilitate the ability to sign a Bitcoin transaction on the layer one, and then stuff happens on the back end where asset transfers are happening on the back end and state changes are happening. So this is what are like the fundamental pieces of a smart contract that's Turing complete. So if in the context of a DEX, for example, what happens when you do a swap transaction? You send funds to a smart contract and you get funds back. So what Bitcoin is lacking is it doesn't have the ability to send the funds back in a secure way, right, on behalf of somebody else. So part of what is necessary is this multi-sig framework that is completely governed by this proof of stake network. So within that, there's some trust assumptions on the verifier network, but the major unlock that no other layer two or no other protocol can offer is that anybody on the layer one that's self-custodying their assets, whether it's Bitcoin, runes, BRC20, or ordinals, they can technically trade against whatever is happening in the network from the layer one with any wallet they choose, whether it's Xverse, Unisat, Magic Eden, or whatever. So if you think about it, any meta protocol, first step, you wrap your asset in, and then you can play with programmability. For a layer two, first step is you bridge to that destination chain, and then you can play around with programmability. With Arch, whichever apps are built on Arch, whenever you call that smart contract, a Bitcoin transaction will pop up, you sign it, and then everything happens without you ever having to bridge first or wrap first. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic for a lot of these application developers, because now your addressable market is no longer whoever is bridged or wrapped first. It's anybody that has Bitcoin in a hot wallet, right, that can sign a smart contract or sign a Bitcoin transaction. So that's the really interesting unlock there.
It's almost kind of like you're working backwards a little bit, right? So instead of wrapping or anything like that, I guess you don't eventually wrap in your method, but in skipping the wrapping, you just kind of agree to what the terms are, but then you I guess sign with the agreement, and then the transaction's done. Is that and then what everything else is done off chain, or could you?
So the VM is ultimately processing the state transitions, which then post those state transitions back to Bitcoin every single transaction. So everything is settling and everything is anchored to Bitcoin through every single transaction. So the trade-off is 10-minute finality, right? It's going to settle in a block versus settling in a minute or 30 seconds or whatever it is on an EVM compatible layer 2. But the difference is there's no way that EVM compatible layer 2 can have a Bitcoin transaction signed on the layer 1 to trade against whatever's happening inside that layer 2. They're not interoperable, right? That's the issue with all this fragmentation. Is what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring all these meta protocols and even possibly layer 2s who want to tap into the VM of Arch and the verifier network of Arch, is we can unify all of this fragmentation into one platform where now there's less liquidity fragmentation. But in a nutshell, though, you're right. Like you can, from the layer 1, it's you sign a PSBT and everything happens trustlessly, anatomically. But for the makers of the liquidity, the people that are actually depositing funds into the multi-sig or the network, they're trusting the verifier network, of course. So those are the ones that are saying, okay, who am I trusting? How am I trusting? Because I'm expecting to get some form of yield by providing this LP into the DEX or letting someone borrow my Bitcoin against an ordinal or something like that. So I'm willing to make some type of trust assumption because I'm expecting some yield in return for it. But what they're trusting is the most decentralized and most secure signer network that exists to date, which is this threshold and signature scheme of Frost plus Roast, which basically decentralizes the signers of, the nodes are the signers. And whenever the multi-sig is going to send an asset, which is the necessary piece of a Turing-complete smart contract, it has to get a majority consensus of all of those nodes. It's not an optimistic type of assumption where we're assuming it's correct and we're waiting a challenge period, because that's pretty difficult to build a DEX with if you're waiting 7 days to make sure that there's nothing to be challenged. We need to know right now if that actually was correct. So that's where the majority consensus comes in, where all of our nodes have to agree that, yes, that transaction was correct and it can get settled on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's if it doesn't get challenged. If it gets challenged, then it'll go past the 7 days, right?
If in an optimistic setup, it's usually like 7 to 14 days of a challenge period that you have until you can
finalize. Okay.
Yeah, issue a challenge, right? Right. But
Awesome.
that's not how Arch is built. We're on validity proofs.
Gotcha. I love that, actually. So the VM is doing all the computational stuff off chain, and then finalizing the final result with Bitcoin on chain, right?
Yep, that's right. So basically, computation, like you said, happens off chain. State change happens off chain. The VM generates the proof and the unsigned transaction that the nodes will ultimately sign, and that transaction that gets posted back to Bitcoin ultimately has that state change and asset transfer that happens. So once the node network says, okay, this happened correctly, we can now sign this transaction, and then that gets posted to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You can really do a lot with this as well. It's not just swaps, right? You can do this with borrowing and lending. You do this with pretty much any DeFi.
Yep, prediction markets, stable coins, new types of token standards, like anything that you want to do that's programmable. Like we have a NFT marketplace that is more like a creator platform, and they want to implement royalties into this. So it's like a closed system marketplace, but at the same time, we have like more familiar features to the Ethereum landscape, where now we can do like random reveals and programmatic mints, as well as royalty enforcement if the artist chooses. So now, like, one of the major limitations of getting major digital artists to Bitcoin is that there's no revenue opportunity for them. They're earning so much money via royalties in the secondary markets on Ethereum. Why would they want to do an ordinal collection at this point, right? Like there's the initial sale, but there's so much more money in the royalties. If you're someone that's like a Snowfro or a Jack Butcher who's making a ton of money on these resale royalties, why would you ever do an ordinal collection? So if we want ordinals to grow and we want to get more validation in the space, we have to have more creator tools. So that's like completely on the table with the programmability that we're offering as well. So there are lots of different creative ideas that are happening right now. Degen games, different like DeFi protocols, different stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so right now there's, it's not right now. There's been a buzz about this, I would say, for the past 12 months, really, from the topic at least, about adding Opcat to Bitcoin Core. So let's say that happens, right? And there was something that's really interesting. I'm sure you're familiar with Udi and the whole Cat VM thing. They were talking about even if Opcat gets added to Bitcoin Core, that a lot of the computational stuff will still happen offline or off chain. So would Opcat really change how Arch network works? Because you guys are already going to be doing your programmability or your computational stuff off chain anyways, but I imagine it would assist some things. Is that correct? Or the way you guys are building it, you don't need it?
For sure. Like, I think that there's a lot of confusion in the market about what Opcat ultimately enables, and there, it's definitely not like this magic bullet that's going to enable full programmability on Bitcoin. It does let you do certain things in a completely trustless way, which is absolutely amazing for everybody in the Bitcoin space, right? So if you're a layer 2, you benefit by there being these completely trustless bridges now to these layer 2s. If you're someone that's building more of like a vault, a smart vault, now you have this more trustless peg into the vault. Stable coins as well. So just in as those do benefit from Opcat, we will as well, and we'll implement Opcat in the ways that make sense. But for the computation, the complex programmability and cross-program invocations that are needed in a mature DeFi ecosystem, that isn't possible with Opcat. So as you mentioned, additional types of VMs and computation systems are going to be needed in order to really drive forward the iterations that we need for the smart contracts for the next wave of DeFi. Like a good example is like when you do a swap on Solana, if you really look at like the transaction flow, there's like 6 different transactions happening behind the scenes. They're like, I'm gonna take 200 USDC from here, I'm gonna take 200 USD from here on this exchange, and they're aggregating all this stuff together. That's cross-program invocation. Like, we need the ability to call smart contracts inside of smart contracts so that we can build these money Legos and create these composable, virtuous flywheels for the DeFi ecosystem. So right now, all the liquidity is completely fractured. You have 100 million here, 100 million here, 100 million here. Like, it's not interoperable with each other, and you can't cross-call it with each other. So once we enable that, that's when Bitcoin DeFi really takes off, because you have LPs who are making money, and then the more that the LPs are making, then that will only create more demand to want to participate even further. And as I already mentioned, like, the more LPs that we get, we already know that the layer 1 demand is there. They just don't want to bridge. So if there's like the only cap on what DeFi can be is how much LPs trust the network and they're willing to deposit funds into the system. But we already know that on the other side, we have plenty of demand. Like, look at what Babylon did today. You had 1,000 Bitcoin that piled into their staking protocol in a matter of hours. That is proven demand that on the layer 1, people want self-custodial DeFi, right? They want to be able to earn without necessarily giving up their keys. So that's a good first step. Where I think they're going to be getting some Cosmos tokens or something for staking those Bitcoin. Now there's going to be a bigger appetite for LP saying, okay, now what else can I get? Can I put into a DeFi or into a DEX pool that earns a certain rate? And it'll just progressively grow from there. But I think it's an incredibly bullish situation to watch unfold.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing, especially using Bitcoin's script the way it is today, right? Without any changes, you're just time locking it to a certain block. Well, that was pretty cool. Are you guys going to be doing anything like that? Any time locking and stuff like that?
We're completely proof of stake as well. It's just the purpose is only just different. Like, our proof of stake network is programmability on Bitcoin. Babylon's more about using Bitcoin as a asset for economic security and other proof of stake networks. So for right now, they're supporting Cosmos, and then eventually they'll start to add more and more proof of stake chains, maybe other L2s. And then that will generate yields for the stakers via those network tokens. For Arch, we're more interested in creating this whole sustainable and scalable system that allows us to bootstrap and scale the verifier network to make it as decentralized as possible. That requires us to use our token as the staked asset so that it can kind of create this virtuous loop, and we can scale the system in a similar way that Solana did. So using Bitcoin as the staked asset ultimately was not a long-term ability for us to consider.
Gotcha. I want to talk about the team a little bit here. Could you kind of break down the team and their responsibilities?
Yeah. Right now, like as of yesterday or Monday, I should say we are 16 strong. We just brought on a new VP of engineering that came from Kraken. Very, very like experienced Bitcoiner, which we're really excited and lucky to have. We brought on a DevRel a couple weeks ago who's really focused on shoring up a lot of our developer onboarding documentation and guides and tutorials, hello world examples, stuff like that, that really is focused on enhancing the developer onboarding experience. That's really it. Like, we want developers to come in and not have a difficult time to build, because at the end of the day, this is not like an EVM copy and paste your smart contract or fork some Uniswap pool and you're ready to go in 5 minutes. That's not how it goes with Arch. We're a Rust-based coding language, so you need to know Rust. Also, you need to understand more of the UTXO kind of transaction flow on the layer 1, since we are anchored to Bitcoin as opposed to doing this account model on a layer 2. So there's a little bit of a learning curve. So the more that we can, create these scaffolded applications and SDKs and things that can assist developers in learning and mastering the skill of deploying, things will just get progressively easier. So DevRel was an important hire for us. Besides that, we have 6 other engineers on the team, living in Morocco, Nigeria, India, UK, and US, and just a bunch of cracked devs that all are like Amin, who hired guys like himself, just these young coders that are extremely hungry and extremely smart. So we've got a great product team. And then on the marketing and BD side, we've got a few on the team there that handle content and business development and things of that nature. So 16 today, and we'll keep on growing pretty fast. Yeah.
Wow, man. I didn't think you guys were that big. That's pretty impressive, man. And you guys are just bringing on new people as well. That's exciting. It's exciting to see a team that big.
Yeah, that's what, honestly, like, that's the whole point of arming yourselves with like quality venture partners, right? And not only they're able to help you get the necessary resources to go and build the right thing, not just kind of like, build something temporary that's not going to be a lasting contribution to the space, which like realistically costs money. It's expensive. And in reality, even though we're relatively young, we've basically built out our entire product in the last 8 to 10 months, mostly like in the last 6 when those hires were happening. So that's like what you get out of venture. And then of course, the relationships with recruiters and top talent and getting recommendations from top ecosystem players like Protocol Labs and Kraken, which is where we got some of these highly regarded senior level dev resources. Those are some of the things that you get when you arm yourselves with quality partners. So I know that sometimes like, VC funded projects get a bad rap, like they're, like anti-community or something. But at the end of the day, like certain things are needed to build quality infrastructure, and you have to play by, certain like a certain playbook. And these guys know the playbook, like it or not, and we're lucky to have those partners, and they've helped us get to where we are. And the product team is just doing their thing now. We're just continuing to scale quickly.
Amazing.
I mean, honestly, I'm really impressed from what I've learned about you in this episode in terms of your business development and your project management skill set. It seems like you have that experience from your previous businesses that you ran kind of roll over to where you are right now. So that's awesome. I think they have the right guy in the right spot. Okay, so if you were to be forced to put Arch Network into one product category in terms of layer 2 sidechain, I know you probably hate this question, but what would you put it into, so maybe the audience can kind of maybe understand a little bit more about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, it put me on the spot, and it sucks because we talk about this so often, and we were just talking with Bob Bodley the other day, and we talk quite frequently with Domo, and we're like always trying to think like, do these nomenclatures actually, are they accurate? They're accurate, number one. Like, you can call everybody in the Bitcoin space a layer 2, but none of them are actually a layer 2.
True.
In the true definition. So like, it's very difficult to put one label on any of these things and be truly accurate. And true to our core messaging, we are a Bitcoin native application platform. So I don't want to deviate from that messaging. However, for everybody that says like, I know layer 1, I know layer 2, like, I don't know what that means. you could think of us as a layer 1.5, right? Meaning that there are elements of this platform where, as a user, you never have to bridge. You can always participate in DeFi and programmability with a Bitcoin transaction, and you never have to worry about trusting anybody. So that's like layer 1 all day, right?
Yep.
Layer 2, what do you get out of a layer 2? You get performance, you get speed, you get lower fees and more fungibility and scalability, all those things. So we have that too. We do. We just give the developers the option of choosing, do I want to be slow and anchored to Bitcoin, or do I want to be fast and sort of like trusting this verifier network longer than the other scenario, right? But the where things kind of get smashed together is that user who wants to self-custody his assets and never has an interest in bridging and only wants to just participate on the layer 1 side, they can still communicate with those guys on the layer 2 side, and all the capital in between is able to participate with one another. So you never have that fragmentation of liquidity, which is a huge importance when building a mature DeFi ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
You eliminate friction in a way as well. And so your token that you mentioned, the Arch token, I imagine it's a new token standard that you guys are developing, or will you be using a current already created standard?
Yeah, so much like SPL in the Solana ecosystem, like our token standard is really meant for gas and staking, right? So it serves no real purpose outside of Arch. So we will have our own native token standard that's basically this computational resource. And then, of course, any other like a token launchpad or token company can build a token or launch a token on that same standard, because effectively it is a smart contract that lives within the system. However, we are forming some interesting alliances with some existing meta protocols like BRC20, for example, where we are finding some interesting synergies where maybe we do some modification of the BRC20 meta protocol inside of Arch, so that if the token originates inside the system, let's say we do a pump.fund type of product where we have 1,000 of these now new token tickers on this modified BRC20, they can still back it out and get on the layer 1, take it outside of Arch, and that kind of turns into a BRC20 because BRC20 is a little bit more apt to programmable things as opposed to runes. Like it's a much more natural partnership. So I think it's very interesting to see some of these types of alliances unfold, not just for us, but for the broader landscape. And I think that's what you're going to see more of as time goes on. You're going to see a little bit more consolidation, a little bit more partnerships forming, where you'll see who the real players are that want to kind of gravitate towards each other.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So if you already know that the best chain doesn't always win, the best 1.5 doesn't always win. It's always the one with the best dApps, right? So if obviously you guys being Rust, meaning you guys are easy to get Solana builders to come build for you guys. If I was someone watching this who was thinking about building an Arch, what would you say to me to basically come build on Arch?
Yeah. So first I'll say is like another reason why we have to have our own token is part of bootstrapping and networking is one thing, but bootstrapping a developer community and bootstrapping like a user base is also the other part. So we put an insane amount of our token makeup or our tokenomics into incentivizing both developer communities and users to go and support those same developers to come in and build. So similar to like Blast, where there was a huge amount of anticipation, not just from the users who want to participate with some of these apps, but the developers are like, I'm going to make a lot of money too, because not only am I going to have new users who want to delegate their liquidity that they deposited into the network in those applications, which represented a unique like new watershed opportunity, but also Blast had a big portion of their incentives to go towards those successful apps. So we're going to have, and this will be announced here pretty soon, so I guess I'll like share a little bit of alpha here, is we're going to have about like almost $40 million worth of incentives that we're going to be airdropping across developers and users when the time comes, after we successfully transition from testnet to mainnet. So the whole purpose of that is, number one, We want the developer community to have the resources and like the necessary stuff that they need, support that they need to go and launch and be successful. Like the next Pump Fund, right? Pump Fund makes like, what is it, $12 million a day or whatever, more than actually the whole Solana chain does. So if you're a developer, that's what these new chains or these new types of layers and ecosystems represent. Is like you can be that next Pump Fund that makes more money than the entire protocol. You just have to be early. You have to launch that sticky app that has a good user experience. So number one is we're supporting those developers by calling them and saying, look, you're going to be earning 6-figure, 7-figure airdrops if you just do what we need you to do, which is onboard into the testnet, transition to mainnet, and just continuing to scale. So we're aligning our interest, and then those tokens, they can either sell them or they can be a part of our journey and have some level of ownership in the platform that they're helping scale, right? So like that's all about what like the theme is of Arch is we got to support the developers. Developers are our customers and our KPI. So we want to make sure that they're successful because we can't be successful unless there's other successful developers on our network. So we're completely aligned with the developers there. And then the users, man, there's going to be so much airdrop potential for the users who just test some of these applications in testnet and then go and participate on the mainnet launch. And you don't necessarily have to go and park millions of dollars on the chain just to farm points. Like we're more focused on two main areas: community growth and on-chain activity. So it's more about looking at who's building the ecosystem versus who has a lot of money and they're just going to pump these fake TVL metrics like some other chains have done in the past.
I love it. Great answer.
Yeah, man, I'm getting more and more excited about being able to play with the ecosystem myself. I'm going to ask you this question that we ask a lot of people that have been building in the space and that have been in the new, I like to call it the new Bitcoin ecosystem from over the past a little over a year. Do you see a single standard, fungible token standard that just winning, or do you see this cohesive multi-meta protocol Bitcoin ecosystem as I see it in the future?
Well, I mean, certainly the two that exist today aren't going anywhere, right? Runes and BRC20, they're here to stay. So I don't see any consolidation among those two meta protocols with each other anytime soon. So really, it's a like what Arch ultimately enables, and I think that's where it gets really interesting for meta protocols such as BRC20 is not only can we make them and their limitations like the two-step commit reveal that is kind of frustrating with BRC20, we can make them much more fungible within the Arch ecosystem and much more interoperable with other standards like Runes. So if you want to trade Ordi for Dog, you can actually do that without having like a shitload of transactions in between, right? So that's ultimately what Arch enables. And these meta protocol standards, they can exist with one another, but I don't foresee a future where we're going to see many like much more right standards, because once again it further fragments liquidity, and that's not what we want. We want to concentrate liquidity as much as we can, and we'd like there to be one clear winner, but unfortunately, with Casey and Runes and sort of the East and BRC20 adoption, I don't see there ever being some type of consensus one token standard like an ERC20 on Ethereum or an SPL on Solana. But two is fine. It's okay as long as we have the necessary infrastructure like Arch to make them more interoperable with one another. Then it's fine.
Yeah. Well, you have to. I think really it also depends on when maybe some of these standards give up. But I agree with you. Runes and BRC20 seem to be concreted in terms of there's a lot of money behind both. There's a lot of backing and money and builders and development happening, but the ARC20s with atomicals, and then you have the TAP protocol, and I think with those other two standards, it's kind of like how much support can they get? Because look, this wasn't ideal the way that this ecosystem was built out, right? It was kind of forced upon Bitcoin's limitations, and the demand to have art on Bitcoin really started everything. Do you see like those other standards as being like they're going to have to do something really big in the next 12 months to get through maybe even this to the next bear market?
Well, I think that there's two different like purposes for these standards. Number one, like if you go to Stacks, if you bridge into Stacks, you're automatically using the SIP10 standard. It's not like anybody talks about, is everybody going to adopt the SIP10 standard? They just say, are you going to like play with Stacks? And then that is the whole point of the SIP10 standard, is just it's wrapped into that standard that's interoperable within the Stacks ecosystem. So like atomicals, I think, will be useful within the context of the AVM, right? And some of these standards, like the fractal standard as well, more interoperable within their ecosystem. Like, sure, they exist there, and that's their purpose. Same with Arch. We'll have our standard, and it only has a purpose within our ecosystem. But it's incredibly difficult to like get all this infrastructure support, centralized exchange support, market maker support, the custodial support. There's a lot of people that you need to get in line in order to get mass adoption for a particular standard. And like, we can go back to the SPL. SPL is like obviously one of the more successful standards now to date in the Solana ecosystem. Like, how much anticipation that came with the Helium and the Arweave ICO or launch, like that took forever for SPL to get adopted from centralized exchanges and all that. So like, think about that. And we just launched Runes like 4 months ago or something, like 4 or 5 months ago. So like, I think that it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of like acceptance, both socially and amongst the infrastructure community, before any token standard can be truly adopted. So I think it's gonna be incredibly difficult for any other token standards in the Bitcoin ecosystem to find that type of adoption, like centralized exchange, infrastructure, market maker, that type of stuff. So everyone will kind of have to play ball with them unless they want to use one of the more regularly accepted ones. Like I know Valar in the Stacks ecosystem, they launched on ERC20 standard. I don't know what Magic Eden's planning to do, but I assume they're going to go SPL, because at the end of the day, there needs to be liquidity. And right now there's no liquidity in the Bitcoin ecosystem. That will change over time, with DEXs. And then when the DEXs start making rewards and fees, then the centralized exchanges will step in and be like, okay, we want those fees, so it's just one by one things will start to happen. But it's a lot to ask for other token standards to be adopted simultaneously before those ones do.
Yeah. I feel like you just painted the picture pretty clear for me. In terms of those other, maybe the smaller standards, like they can, like 8 atomicals can kind of create their own destiny, not being one of the main fungible token standards on Bitcoin, but they can still exist, and maybe they get bigger later, and then they have their own standard that can get adopted by a centralized exchange, let's say a year down the road if they get big. But the two that have established and planted their flags are Runes and BRC20s, and that's pretty much the ones.
100%, yeah. No question.
Yeah, man. All right. I guess my last question would be, with all these Bitcoin forks that are happening now with Fractal, they say they're a side chain, but they're obviously a Bitcoin fork. And you have stuff like Rootstock and even older ones like Bell. Do you guys plan on doing anything on any of these Bitcoin forks where you can just copy and paste and kind of keep it moving, or do you guys strictly want to stay on Bitcoin?
Yeah, even though like we're totally UTXO compatible, so technically once we open source everything, you could probably fork our repo and go launch it on Bells or some of these other chains, and make it work. But our main focus, and we try not to get distracted in all these other ideas, is we want to unlock programmability on the layer 1, and then we'll scale from there. That doesn't allow us to or afford us the opportunity to be distracted with other chains and ecosystems like a Cardano or Dogecoin or anything like that. So like, I know that there could be some novelty there, and certainly they could probably benefit from some of the programmability that we're bringing to Bitcoin. So if someone wants to do that, by all means. But yeah, that's our main focus, is just Bitcoin.
So no Fractal either then?
No. Fractal is like technically like an L2 BSV fork, right? That's kind of effectively what it is.
Yeah.
So if I'm in my mind, if I'm going to build an L2, I'm probably not going to like limit myself to the shortcomings and limitations of Bitcoin, even if it does have a little bit better features. But so like we have our version of layer 1 programmability, and then we also have our version of scalability, which will certainly compete with any layer 2s like Fractal.
Yeah,
Amazing.
And it seems like for what Arch is bringing, they don't really need to do that with those kind of forks. Maybe like if Doge or something wants to like improve their, programmability, then someone in that community can fork what they have.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
exactly. So awesome. Last question for me. I promise. This has been an amazing educational episode. I think the community is going to love it. The last question for me is, win Lambo. No, I mean, but serious, on a serious note, like, so testnet and mainnet, what are your, obviously you can't give us dates, but like, what are you thinking? Because there's going to be a lot of excited people after this episode.
So like testnet has technically been live since Nashville. We did our key distribution event to our nodes. We have 25 nodes, all fantastic from the Solana and chain agnostic commercial validator community. So we also have about 20 others that are kind of waiting in line as well to get issued keys as well. So about 40 to 50 nodes will be in the network as soon as we're ready for launch on mainnet. So it's been a challenge for some teams to build because there were no like SDK libraries for front end builders. So front end builders were like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to build this contract or whatever. So we shored up a lot of the developer onboarding documentation. Like I said before, that DevRel was a really good hire for us because now he's really focused on onboarding experience and that friction that exists to get to market on testnet. So in 3 weeks, we will have this huge public announcement about that $40 million airdrop that I was talking about before. And then that is when you'll see a bunch of a post on the timeline with maybe a hype video and a dashboard for tracking your points and things of that nature, all launched all at once in the next, like at 3 weeks, I'll say. Can't give an official date quite yet, but yeah, so stay tuned for that date. That's when everything really kicks off. Developers, the clock is on to deploy into the testnet. Users is the first chance you could actually start building up your points and ranking up within the ecosystem. It's going to be kind of it's going to be a cool game. Like we're gamifying the shit out of it, so it'll be fun. But once again, the theme is how do we support the projects that are building on Arch? Not really like let's just pump Arch, right? That's not the point. We would much rather pump the Bitflows, the Liquidiums, the Saturns that are launching on us, and then we'll track their progress, and then we'll like gamify that and incentivize them to do more within the applications that we're supporting. So that all will be launched in the next 3 weeks. And then that'll be about a 2-month testnet process, which then will transition into a mainnet launch probably in December. So really excited for that.
How do I get started, if you don't mind me asking? If I want to get started like right now, like what do I got to download? How do I get started with this?
So there's a local Arch repo that you can actually build without necessarily needing like RPC endpoints quite yet, but you can like build and test your application within this local environment. We have some documentation and like an Arch book that has all the resources and guides that you need. There's a Hello World example. And that's basically how you get started. And then if you want to get some more personal support, you can jump into the Discord and get acquainted with our team, and they'll give you some more support. Also, there's a hackathon going on right now by the Bitcoin Startup Lab. I don't know when this airs, but I know that submissions are coming up, like the deadline's coming soon. But there's like over $500,000 in prizes across all the different technology providers, but Arch itself will be providing about 30 grand in prizes. So all you have to do is build something creative and think something that we think is going to be fun and exciting for the Arch ecosystem, and then you can not only earn a big portion of that airdrop that I was talking about, but there could be some hackathon prizes to take part in as well.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much for doing this for us. This is kind of the part of the show where I kind of give you the stage. You get a few minutes to talk about anything you want.
Yeah, I think I wasted all my alpha earlier in the call, so I don't know if I have any left. Man, what do you guys want to see built in the ecosystem? Maybe let's do that. I'll put you guys on the spot.
Yeah.
I want to see some.
I want to keep mine a little quiet because, like,
Oh.
I don't know. I might want to join the network here of builders. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the right ecosystem that is going to be able to attract users, right? But first, you got to build some really cool stuff, like Shizzy said, whether that's a predictions market or you know, or perpetual decks. I think perpetual decks, you can't really go wrong, especially if you have a really good ecosystem. So that's something that definitely would love to see. And you know, there's a lot of good builders on Bitcoin's native layer. I actually think that Runes has attracted builders, even if the protocol they figured out after coming that, like, hey, it's kind of not much to build here except for having the fungible token, but they keep going. And I think there's a lot of transition that will probably happen with some of these good builders into your ecosystem. So I'm excited to see what comes out.
Yeah, and I just want some degen stuff, right? I want some Ampliford forks,
This guy,
something like that. I want some ohms like Ponzi games.
Yeah, give me some rebase 3-3.
I just want to have fun with a little bit of money, and that's my favorite stuff. Right? I want to put a couple $100 in, and if it goes zero, it goes to zero. But if it goes to $1 million, that'd be amazing. So I mean, just fun stuff where I can get my adrenaline pumping, get those dopamine hits with small amounts of money that could potentially go far, and still protect my Bitcoin on L1, right? So
yeah. She's obviously not allowed to go to casinos.
I don't gamble. I DeFi. There's a difference.
100%. Yeah, no, there's a project building. I don't know if you guys remember Satoshi Dice back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so much on-chain activity back then with just this simple little RNG dice game. And so we do have a project that's building a Satoshi Bet platform with some degen games, and it'll be madness for a while, because I think that what you'll see some forks on, of different games. Once you have the RNG and the Oracle inside of ours, then you can just do whatever you want. We'll see like 100 different coin flips and wheel games, Russian roulette games, and all sorts of degen stuff. So I'm excited.
Sign me up, man. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, man, this has been absolutely amazing. We appreciate your time. We appreciate Arch. We appreciate the builders, man. Without the builders, we don't have a job. So we appreciate you guys definitely. And if there's anything you need from us, just reach out to us. We'll definitely have you on again for a second one.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Awesome.
Thanks, Matt.
We'll talk soon.
Absolutely amazing. Arch, I'm definitely excited for it, dude. I was definitely excited before we went in, but actually really getting to sit down with him was actually eye-opening.
Yeah. I really love this approach of how they're making this VM trustless, right? They're building it, and that's another thing that takes time to build that trustless network up, right? So you can make it trustless and decentralized, but they are solving an issue that a lot of builders need solution to, right? So I'm excited to see what Arch is able to bring to the table. I'm very confident in what their end product is gonna be. Obviously, I want to play with things and break things, and I'm sure they'll give us a chance to do that.
I mean, yeah, dude, I can't wait. I mean, you got ABCD Capital, you got all these different portal ventures. I mean, it's not just us that are excited. You got some big money that's excited with this project, and that actually gives me more of a heartbeat on this thing. Definitely want to check it out, play with testnet, maybe even build something. We'll see. Yeah. But I just want to thank you guys. Did I cut you off?
I was just going to say, for the people that are doubting that the Bitcoin ecosystem is going to be the main narrative this cycle, I mean, this should give you even more evidence, and this is just one of the many builders that are coming out to bring solutions. So my conviction keeps getting stronger and stronger.
100%. And guys, if you wouldn't mind, go and check out ordinalrevolution.com. We have some of the best articles. If you know someone new just getting into the space, send them our website. We have articles dating back all the way till last year. And if you need some merch, we have some of the best merch in the game. Hit the store icon, hit that, go down, some of the best merch. And if you guys want some added to the store, please reach out to us. We can add that for you.
Yep. And if you get a moment, guys, it helps us out a lot for you guys to check out our partners, BitPerp, which is the premium perpetual DEX that's going to be launching on Botonix, which is Bitcoin layer 2. And I believe they're going to be shooting for Q4 on that. They have a paper trading competition coming up. We'll give you guys more details on that as we get closer to that date. Ordinal Hive is a trader's tool platform that is scaled out from native Bitcoin. They also are building on native Bitcoin with an aggregator DEX, but they scaled out to Merlin chain as well. So you can earn points if you visit beta.ordinalhive.io. Earn those points because those points will be able to be exchangeable for, I believe, their future possible token. I'm not sure. We'll get official announcement on that soon. And then Fluid Tokens is the Runes decentralized DEX on Bitcoin's native layer. Now they do it in a way with limit buy and sell orders as liquidity, but they split up all the runes for you, so they make it easy. Also, layer 1 staking will be coming by way of Fluid Tokens as well. And then VDEX, Verothium DEX, is a Merlin Bitcoin layer 1 focused synthetic asset DEX, and they just announced that they are live to the full public right now. So if you have BRC 420s, go over there, check out their single staking BRC 420 platform.
Amazing. And guys, we are live Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. UTC. We are live every single day except the weekends, I always like to say. But appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Peace.
Ordinal Revolution. Let's go.